Today I was inspired by Dave Canterbury of Wilderness Outfitters. He's been doing a series on wood crafting, and he's talking about using green wood and going out and crafting a lot of the stuff that we use when we're bushcrafting. So I thought I would do a little bit of that myself. I do not have a kupilka. Now if you're not familiar with that, that is a wooden cup, and traditionally it was made at the birth of a young child, and an elder would carve a wooden cup out and they would give that to that child, and properly maintained and cared for, it would last that child for a lifetime. I like to have beverages, hot beverages, a lot of time when I'm out at camp, and usually I use a single-walled stainless steel cup that nests within my water bottle, or it nests on the outside of my water bottle, to drink my beverages out of. But if you're out for very long, that single wall cup will heat up very rapidly. So many times when I'm out, I take this. This is just a double walled stainless steel cup, and I like stainless steel. I use a lot of it. And when you're drinking out of it and it's really hot, it keeps you from burning your lips off. And I like this size. It's a little over a cup, because a lot of the hot beverages that we like to take with us, like this Land O'Lakes cappuccino and these Starbucks Vias, they call for 8 ounces of water or a cup. My mother bought me this. This is a U.S. military cup from eras way back. I don't know exactly when, and it holds exactly 1 cup. So this is a nice size, and I thought it would be good to have dual purpose. It could be used as a measuring cup also. So I'm going to make me a wooden cup, and this is a piece of cherry. And all I've done is I've taken my cup of the desired size and I've laid it on here and traced it out, and then given myself an extra 1/4 of an inch all the way around so that I can work to that line and then finish it up with some of my fine sanding. Now I thought while I was out here I would show you my toolkit, and when I do practice bushcraft and woodcraft and I'm making items out in the field, I thought I'd show you the type of tools that I use. But that could be a video in itself. So what I'm going to do instead is, as I make this, I will bring the video in and out often and put it all together so that at the end we have a short video on me making this, and as I use the different tools, I'll have that included in each one of those segments. But I will say that when I obtained this piece of cherry, I did have my weatherling's axe, I had my 7 saw, and always in my kit, in my cutting tools, I try to keep a Baco Laplander. And the axe and the Baco Laplander have already been used to pare down this block of wood. My only concern is the thickness here. I don't have a lot of room to really take out much down here or above, so I'm gonna have to be careful with that. And also right here on the side, I start to get out of some of that heartwood and get into the latest part of that cherry that was grown. But looking here on the very end, the way the grain is, and I don't see any splits or cracks in this, and this is pretty dry now. This was harvested back in the early part of spring, around May. So I think the cracking and all has settled out, and I think we'll be okay at this point. But it's been outside in a firewood pile, so it does still have some greenwood qualities to it. So let me go ahead and get started, and like I said, as I use my different tools, I'll bring you in and out and bring you along on this journey. Okay, what I have here is a handle that's made for a tap and a die set. And this is a set of wood bits. And the nice thing about these are, I got 3 of them in a pack. And as you'll notice here on the very end, it's like a screw. See if I can get that focused in there. And as you drill this into the wood, these cutting teeth will start to cut, and it makes a very nice tool when you're out and you need to bore holes through your woodcraft projects. And I got a 1/4, a 3/8, and a 1/2 inch. And that's really not big enough. You really need a larger bit for doing furniture and that type of work, but for small tasks like this it works pretty well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put me a mark just for reference in the center of this block of wood and place this in here and adjust it by turning this, and that's the way you do that, is you turn this outside ring, it closes in the center and it can capture the end of this bit because it's not round, it's angled off. So we'll put that in there and then tighten it up, snug it down good, and then I'll take my multi-tool, which this is not really part of my wood kit as much as it is part of my everyday carry kit. Go get him, Lucky. Pardon the noise, next door neighbors are moving some boat trailers in and out. But anyway, I'll go ahead and I'll get this locked down and we'll drill us a hole in the center. Alright, so we got rid of that truck. Like I said, we're just going to take this and we're going to bore down in the center. Now what I'm trying to do, I have absolutely no intentions of trying to carve out the entire center of this cup with this bit. The idea is to just get me a place working here and get it at depth, so that then I can come back and take a chisel and start carving. But I want to make sure as I do this that I don't go too deep. So I'm going to measure this out by holding it on the side, putting me a mark here with my pencil, and I know how far I can bore into this piece of wood. Once I get it to the depth I want, I just back it out and it unscrews until it loosens up, and then we get a nice hole here in the center that we can start using our chisel to work in. Okay, we have our hole bored in the center, and the idea is now we're going to take a wood file, and you can use any size that you have. I just happen to have a 3/4 inch, and we're going to start working this around in a circle until we get down to the depth here that we want and give us a place of relief that we can push into. But I'm having a bit of a problem. Once I finish doing my boring, this thing is wobbling. I used the flat side to use as the top of my cup. So what we're going to have to do so that this thing ain't moving around while I'm trying to work, is we're going to have to take our axe. And like I said, I usually keep an axe in my kit when I go out. Very handy to have. And this is just a weatherling. And all I'm going to do, I don't want to remove a lot of material here. I'm just going to chop this down just enough on this high side that I can get it to where it can sit on this stump and not be moving around so bad on me. Alright, that's one high spot. Right down here is the other one. Be very careful when you're doing this. You don't want to remove too much material, and you don't want to chop up here where your hand is, okay? Use good safe practices, especially if you keep your axe as sharp as mine is. You can literally shave with this thing. So we'll continue to flatten that out. That's a lot better, getting that hump out of it right there, and then start doing a little bit of work with that chisel. Okay, so I think we've got that flat enough now that it's not going to be moving around on us. We'll take these shavings here and throw them right in the fire pit. A little bit later on, we might actually start a fire, but I'm going to tell you what, this is the first week of black powder season, and it is so hot. It's 81 degrees out here today. It's just way too hot to be out, and I've been fighting a head cold, so nothing's going to come around with me with my sniffing and snorting. So we're going to work on some crafting projects instead. So now I can get in here and just with some push cuts, I'm not going to use a hammer or a tool or anything right now at this time. I just want to get in here and see how this chisel works and start using this hole as a relief area to push it into and clean it out and see if I can't enlarge that just a little bit. So I'll get working on that and I'll bring you back now that we got a good stable surface to work on. And I know someone's going to ask me, how about a bit and brace, because you can get a lot larger bits in a bit and brace set than you can using this little modified tool that I had. And yes, you sure can. This is a great tool. This was picked up at a flea market. It's old school. I'm not sure of the year, but it's one of the earlier ones because it only has a forward and reverse setting on it, and there's really no lock as you screw down the chuck. But I was able to pick up this set of bits, and I think I paid $10 for the entire box. And this is like the one that I had years ago that, well, somebody decided they needed it more than I did. And the brace is actually a little bit older than the one that I had. But they're great tool options for the homestead if you want something to use when the power's out. But this is a little too heavy for me to carry in my pack unless I'm setting up a base camp. So that's why I'm using some of the modified tools. Alright, so what I was sitting here and using this thing by hand, and I gotta tell you what, after about 15 minutes of that, I got up and walked in the shed here at the homestead and went and got a hammer. Now, I don't normally carry a hammer in my woodcrafting kit, so it's a little bit out of what my plan was today. But you could always get a baton. You could always just take a stick and whack on it with that. You've got your saw, so you could cut off something. But I'm here at the house, and I'm not out with a bunch of hardwood trees, and I'm here in the neighborhood, so I don't have access to that. So I did just go in the shed and get a hammer. So anyway, what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of working around the edges and chipping this thing out a little bit as I go. And I can tell you right now that this flat chisel is saving a lot of time as far as using a spoon knife, but this would be a great time to have a gouge that would start giving me that rounded edge. And you can really see where tools that are made for hollowing wood out would be very advantageous for a project like this. But this is not the typical project that I normally do, and I don't have those tools here, so I'm just utilizing what I have. So I'll continue to work on this until I get all the way out to my interior pencil line, and then I'll bring you back. Well, I think I've done about all I can do with the chisel, and I've gone in here now and I've started using my spoon knives or crook knives to get in here and start trying to take out some of the chisel marks. And I have 3 different spoon knives. I don't normally carry all 3 of them with me, but that's where they live, is in my bushcraft kit. And this is the latest one that I bought, and you can see the size of that in reference to my hand, how much more of a concave shape you can get with this particular knife. And this is one of those that is beveled on both sides, so there's really nothing to push against until you get way up here. So you have to be careful with the amount of pressure that you put on it and keep it extremely sharp. But for a larger bowl like this, I think it'll be nice. This one is the same way. This too is beveled on both sides. The disadvantage to that is, like I said, you can't put your thumb against it and push. The advantage is you can use this end to dig in, and of course you get 2 sharp sides to cut with. And this is my favorite, and this is the one that actually I carry into the woods most of the time. It has a very small radius, comes to a point, and it's sharpened on one side, and this one is in a right hand model, and this is really the one that works best for spoons. But on a larger project like this, as I'm working with it, I find that getting in here and working like this is working pretty well for me also. The biggest thing is you don't want to try to take off a lot of material at one time. This is really just scraping the inside of that out. I'm pretty surprised at how hard the inside of this particular piece of cherry is compared to some of the spoons and other things that I've made out of this. This one is being pretty tough. So it's going to be a long, slow progress, and I'm trying to really get my sides steep and then round in towards the bottom. So as I start to taper this down, you can see I'm almost to my line. Right there at the point of that knife is my line. So I stopped all of the heavy work, and now I'm just kind of grinding that away. So it's going to get real slow at this point, But I wanted to do that and try to get close to that line before I start deciding how I'm going to cut off all of this excess. In the past, I've just used a hatchet. It works pretty good, but the idea was I wanted to make sure there were no cracks in this, because I would like to actually be able to use this. Okay, well, here's where we are. You can see the depth. I've gone as deep as I can with the knives that I have and still keep a nice rounded shape. And I'm going to tell you what, I don't have office worker hands. No offense to you office workers. I spend time outside and I work with my hands all the time, and I got to tell you, this is putting a hurting on my hands. They are breaking up calluses and getting new hot spots in places I don't have calluses. And I haven't cut myself yet, but man, I've got some hot spots. So anyway, now I'm going to go ahead and start cutting off some of this outside. And I think what I'm going to do is start off with that Baco Laplander saw and just start trying to ease off some of these corners and getting rid of a lot of this access in here as much as I can with a saw. I'm a little scared to start doing a whole lot of heavy hatchet work because I don't want to take a chance of compromising this bowl. It's coming out so nice and I don't see any imperfections in it at all, except for one little knot piece here in this grain right there, and I think that's going to sand out. I'm almost to the end of it. So that's where we are so far. Let's start working on a little saw action. Alright, so I've got my marks here, and I'm just going to put my saw here, and I'm going to leave a good, at least 1/8 of an inch. I want plenty of room to get in there with a file. Well, I'm at about 1/4 of an inch actually right now, but that's okay. I think that's fine. I really want to err on the side of leaving too much material rather than not leaving enough. I really watch the way I'm holding this with my hands now, and just sit here and cut these corners off and get rid of as much of this excess material as I can. So I won't bore you with me just sitting there sawing. I'll bring you back when I'm done. Okay, saw did pretty good, but this section right here, I'm just not getting it. So come back in here with the axe, start working on this outside edge a little bit, get that barking all off of there, and start trying to cut down to that saw line without messing up. What I don't want to do is get into this bowl area here, but I got to get rid of this corner, get it in there where I want it, and then I'll start seeing what else I'm going to do with the axe. Alright, I want to show you this axe work. We've got this area up here I want to make sure I don't get into. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in over here on the side, well away from the top, and chopping the bottom down at an angle. Not a whole lot of angle, just enough. Start putting me where I want to be. And then I flip it over, and then I start at the bottom and very gently work my way back up until I've equaled that back out. And I'm not tapering the top in, and if I am, I'm not doing it much at all, because I don't want, hold on just a minute here. I don't want to get too close in here. I'd rather finish that up with my knife or get in here and really choke up on that axe and give it the angle that it needs, that I don't split it. Okay? Because if you don't, that's what I was afraid of. See that split? That means I've just lost that much at the top of my cup. So now all of this hollowing out has got to be recreated. That's the problem if you start using the axe and getting too aggressive. Now I'm going to try my best to get this sun where you can see that. But there's the split, and that came from chopping on this side right here. Put too much pressure on that top lip. So we're going to lose that much of the top of our bowl. So we'll go ahead and cut that off, and we'll start hollowing that bowl out again to get it to the depth we want. Okay, so to make sure that doesn't happen again, we're not chopping. I'm just using this axe. This is where it's really important to have a good sharp axe. I'm using it more like a plane now. So now I've got it all the way down past that crack. And I'll come over here to this side and do the same thing. Remember, not really chopping as much as just planing that wood off. If you have to, you can turn it around. Sometimes you have to be a little bit ambidextrous. Get used to using those tools in your weak hand when you get in a position like this, because this is where you've really got to be careful. So now all that work we did hollowing out that cup, we're right back to that point. We've got our top pretty decently flat. Might have to take off a little bit more over here, but then we'll get back to work with the spoon knife on the inside to get that depth that we want. So when it's traced back out, much more we have to carve out. And now our depth is right at the bottom, so we don't have any more room for mistakes. We're going to have to finish this now totally by carving. Well, it feels like it's taking forever, but I finally got it back out to the line all the way around. But like I said, now my depth is going to be critical, and I think my bottom is only down to about right here. So I've still got probably at least another 1/4 of an inch in depth that I have to go down. And at this point it's just slow carving, because I'm not trying to take any large amounts of wood. I'm just scraping it. If I do this scraping smooth enough and keep the sides steep enough, I think I might be able to still get the amount of fluid that I want. And I might not have to do a whole lot of sanding to the inside of this thing. And that would be a good thing. The handle profile I laid out, but I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do that yet. Very shortly I'm going to start trimming up some of this outside with a knife and just whittling on that a little bit, just because I'm getting tired of doing the bowl, and I'll take a little break on that for a little while. But probably just use a more knife and a pocket knife. I've got a couple of options that I keep in my kit. But in the meantime, it's still just more of this hollowing out and going a little deeper. I'll tell you what, I'm getting some real hot spots and stuff on my hands. I don't have tender hands by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm starting to get some hot spots and even developing a blister where I don't have a callus. I think it would have been wise to have worn a pair of gloves during this project, but I didn't, and I think I might just go get me a pair of those. I'll bring you back in a little while, show you the progress. But here we are so far. Alright, let me cut you off. Alright. If I put my carving knife down in this cup, put my hand at the top of the cup, that's how deep it is. We are daggone close. Very close. And my arm is plain wore out from digging the inside of this thing out. So I've had enough of it. So I'm going to go ahead and start shaping up the outside a little bit. I have two knives that I'm going to use to do that. One, the knife that I keep in my kit all the time, just a plain Mora, nothing special, just a cheap Mora with a carbon steel blade. And this old hook knife, which is a Schrade Walden 136. Picked it up at a gun show. Really does nice work when you're wanting to get around and get inside these little curved places like this. You just have to be careful, like any other hook knife, you know. You got that inset in that there. And if you're doing any carving towards yourself whatsoever, you want to make sure you have a backstop there. Because this can be one of the more dangerous knives that you'll use. But between these two, I'm going to start working on the outside a little bit just to give my hands a break. I did go ahead and put a glove on, but it was way too little, way too late, and definitely got some spots going on here. A lot of work into one of these cups. That's all right. It makes you appreciate it. All right, well, here's where we got to today, and I probably got, oh, I don't know, a good 4 hours in this thing. But the inside the bowl is cleaned out pretty good, and it holds 8 ounces, and the outside is all roughed in. And yes, I dropped my axe, went to grab it, it fell off the stump, and like I said, it's razor sharp, so I cut myself. But it's coming along pretty good, and now it's a matter of just starting to carve out the outside and putting some sanding on it. So we'll have to save that for another day, and we'll call this part 2 later on as we continue working on our cup. Alright, so we're going to take this, and I poured water all over it. I checked it to make sure it held the 8 ounces that I wanted, and then I'm going to take that and put it in a zip top bag, not soaking wet, but you know, I filled the inside up with water and poured water all over the outside of it. We're going to put that in the bag, and we're going to leave it outside so it doesn't dry out and crack on us. And we'll continue this at another day. And thanks for joining me today. I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. Until next time, God bless.